Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Coming Out Cosmic podcast. My name is Christine Nowinski, ET contactee, awakening coach, and founder of Coming Out Cosmic. This podcast is for those who believe in the strange and esoteric, otherworldly things, aliens, reptilians, psychic abilities, intuition, etc. This podcast is especially for you if you have your own stories that you've been too afraid to share with other people, and that's one of the missions of Coming Out Cosmic, is to show you that if I'm willing to go out publicly and talk about all these weird things, that you should come out cosmic too. On today's episode, we are going to talk about one of the beliefs that I have that is actually quite strange. Perhaps you've never thought of this yourself because you've never experienced something that would allow for this belief to ever enter your mind, but please use this podcast episode as a way to open your mind even more about the weird and esoteric, because what I'm about to share with you is not something that is normal. And by the end of this podcast episode, perhaps you will form your own belief about the subject. And the subject is, can a baby biologically, genetically, physically change its sex while in the womb, even well past the week marker of when they should be allowed to switch sexes? And what I mean by that is, when the baby is in the womb, there's a percentage of time where the baby cannot be determined male or female yet. Therefore, one would think that, oh, well, of course, during that time, the baby might have more of a chance of determining its sex. But I mean, is it possible a baby can change its sex all the way up until delivery? Meaning, the baby was a boy, the sonogram said a boy, the blood test said a boy, but now, all of a sudden, the baby comes out a girl. Is this possible? I have actually heard of this happening to people before, and now that I've had my own experience with this phenomenon, I can very strongly say and suggest that yes, this is very possible that a baby can change its physical, biological, genetic state from one sex to another sex while in the womb, way past the time in which a baby should be able to do this, way past the time in which one might consider normal. But of course, you know, here on the Coming Out Cosmic podcast, we talk about things that are not normal, and we do try to normalize them. So let's get into my crazy story and why I believe that this is possible, because I know that this happened with my son. So listen to the story, listen to the evidence that I present, and I want for you to have your own take by the end of this podcast episode and start thinking, is this possible? Is this something that could have possibly happened to my own children or to the children of somebody that I love? When I first found out that I was pregnant, my husband and I both agreed that we would not find out the sex of the baby. We had just heard from other people that finding out the sex when the baby is delivered is one of the greatest surprises that life can offer you, and there's nothing like it that you can ever have ever again. So we're like, okay, let's not find out the sex. Now, if you have ever had the opportunity and been fortunate and blessed enough to have a baby and to not find out the sex of your baby as well, you will know how hard it is to keep this shit a secret. In my case, I was considered a high-risk pregnancy, so I was going to the doctor's office multiple times a week, having multiple sonograms, and every time I'd go, I'd have to really lay into the staff, hey, respectfully, we do not want to know what the gender of the baby is, so please do not slip up. Generally, the staff was always great with this request. It's not something that's very new. I think a lot of people are not finding out the sex of their baby. And the staff would generally ask me, okay, so what sex do you think the baby is? To which I would always respond, this baby is a girl. I know in my heart of hearts that this baby is a girl. I feel her feminine energy. I see her in my dreams. She is a girl. There was literally no doubt in my mind that I was having a girl, and a lot of my closest friends and family would agree. Now, backpedaling to the week that I found out that I was pregnant, I did not tell anyone yet except for my husband. I went to a psychic development circle with my best friend, Rosanna. She did not know I was pregnant. I'll explain what this circle is. So basically, it's a group of people who are working on their psychic development skills, led by a highly intuitive psychic herself. This psychic's name is Patty. So Patty is there hosting the psychic circle, and there's probably about 15 of us in the class, all just tapping in in, meditating, really trying to pick up on any sort of psychic signals or psychic messages that are permeating the area in that moment. During the circle, Patty looks at me a bit quizzically. She looks at me with a little bit of amusement on her face, and she says, "Are you trying to get pregnant?" I am very intuitive. I'm very claircognizant. I know things without explaining how I know things. So I know that she knows that I'm pregnant and that this is just more of a courteous thing for her to ask me if I'm trying to get pregnant, because it allows for me the opportunity to deny and not say that I'm pregnant if I don't want to. But I know that she knows that I'm pregnant. So I respond to Patty, "I'm pregnant." Everybody in the circle is applauding. My friend Rosanna looks at me and she's actually kind of annoyed because she thinks that this is like a secret I've been holding from her for a while. And I'm like, no, I literally just found out 2 days ago that I'm pregnant. I wasn't going to tell anybody. And so Patty responded, "Yes, I didn't want to ask you directly if you're pregnant, but I do want to tell you that you have pink bubbles all around you, and I do think that this baby is a girl." Many psychics in the class agreed. Fast forward to my Quantum Healing Hypnosis Therapy session, QHHT, which is basically a very deep past life regression therapy wherein you are connected to your higher self. During the session, I'm pregnant, same pregnancy, and long story short, my higher self does tell me and validate the baby is a girl. A higher self will never tell you information that you're not ready for or information that you don't already know. Therefore, I was not surprised during the session at all. I was like, I knew it. Like, this is just validation for me. I know that this baby is a girl. And even though a part of me did not want to fully know the sex of the baby, again, the fact that my higher self told me is a sign that this is information that I was ready to hear. And honestly, maybe I was ready to hear this information so that I can tell people this story today. I was pretty happy because I'm like, you know what? My intuition is right. But I did not tell Chris, my husband, that my higher self told me this. And there's a lot of reasons for it. One of the reasons being, even though my husband is extremely supportive of all of the alien and psychic things that I take part in, I don't know that he fully believes or really understands what QHHT is. Therefore, I did not share with him what my higher self said because, one, I didn't want to ruin the surprise in any capacity, and two, he'd probably think it's bullshit anyway. A few weeks after my QHHT session, my husband and I go for a sonogram, and one of the technicians slips up. She calls our attention to the screen so we can see the measurements of the baby, and clear as day, we see the words sex, female. I played it off because at this point, I wasn't sure if my husband had seen those words because the technician did pretty quickly change over the screen because I think she realized her massive mistake. And my husband didn't say anything during the appointment either. However, when we walked out of the sonogram appointment together, my husband looked at me quite disappointed and was like, "I saw it's a girl." The root of his disappointment did not come from the fact that the baby is a female. The root of his disappointment came from the fact that the surprise was ruined. And I agreed. I was like, you know what? I saw the screen as well. However, I still feel like we should not tell friends and family. We should just keep this to ourselves because at this point, I had not had my baby shower yet. So if I were to tell people that I am having a girl, I was afraid that I would just get a bunch of female items, a bunch of female clothing, toys, pink everything at the baby shower. And for practicality reasons, understanding that my husband and I wanted to have more children, we wanted to avoid having too many pink female things. Therefore, that was another benefit of not finding out the sex of the baby. You do, in fact, receive more practical gifts from friends and family because nobody really wants to buy you clothes when the baby is neutral and they don't know if it's a boy or a girl. So instead, they'll buy you like the diapers that you're actually asking for. A few weeks after that sonogram appointment, I went to see my friend Shiv, a highly intuitive psychic who literally studied with monks in mountains in India. He had gifts that were unbelievable, and unfortunately, he passed away this past November. However, I still love telling and sharing my stories with Shiv to carry on his legacy. Shiv looks at me and he's like, "Your baby is still deciding its sex." I'm like, "What do you mean my baby is still deciding its sex?" Because even though my mind is extremely open, at this point in my life, not once had I ever ever considered that this is possible? Shiv repeats, your baby is still deciding its sex. It doesn't know if it wants to be a boy or a girl yet. But I can validate for you that your baby has princess warrior energy. So I thought that was pretty cool that my baby was a princess warrior in a past life, which for me, that validated even more that, okay, this baby is a girl. So now it's a few days before I give birth. I'm at Target. I'm picking out the first day coming home from the hospital outfit, and I run to the girl section. I'm picking out a really cute frilly pink girl outfit because I know it's a girl. And then a part of me stops and thinks, well, wait a minute. What happens if my baby is a boy? I'm like, well, I should at least have like an outfit for him because he's not going to wear this pink frilly thing coming home. I haphazardly grab a set of blue plain PJs just in case my baby is a boy, which I did not believe for the slightest bit would be the case. Now it's June 20th. We are in the delivery room. I am stoked because I am about to meet my baby girl for the first time, Eliana Marie. I had her name all picked out, did not have a boy name picked out. Fast forward, the baby is being delivered and the nurse turns to my husband and says, do you want to shout out the gender of the baby? So as the baby comes out, my husband and all the nurses shout, it's a boy. And at this moment, I am in shock. I am in literal shock. When the baby comes out and I hear it's a boy, my mind is still not registering that this baby is a boy until I actually look at his anatomy. And I'm like, oh my God, it's a boy. I literally thought that somehow I hopped into another timeline where I had a baby boy. I thought that I slipped into a different reality because I was so sure that the baby would be a girl. 13 months later, and I am incredibly happy to be a boy mom. I honestly could not imagine my life any other way. Obviously, I know that everything works out exactly as it should. And my baby boy is the sweetest, most beautiful boy that one will ever meet. But of course, I'm the mom, so I have to be biased about that, right? But looking back to all of the events that led up to me thinking that my baby was a girl, and thinking back to the most important thing within all of this, the most important thread that weaved it all together, my own intuition, I was very baffled. And I thought, what happened? Because something happened. I'm very intuitive. I am not one to not trust my intuition. Therefore, I knew that I needed to contact my friend Laura, who is a highly gifted channeler. I just needed to know her opinion on the whole situation of what happened. Did my baby change his or her sex in the womb? Is this possible? So Laura from lauradchannels.com, I'll leave her information in the show notes. She channels my higher self and she channels Brody's higher self, and they both agree and confirm that this information is okay to be presented to me, and that yes, he did in fact switch his gender from a female to a male while in the womb. This just makes me think back to the time when Shiv told me, yeah, your baby is still thinking about what sex it wants to be. So I'm thinking, and I'm getting the chills as I'm talking about this, which is always validation from my higher self that I am hitting on something, that I'm correct here. But I'm wondering if during the entire pregnancy, my baby genetically, biologically, energetically, whatever, in all the capacities that are possible, I think that my baby was actually female. And then up until the point when Shiv was talking about how my baby was still deciding on the sex, I think that's when the switch might have happened. And more fun facts about this whole situation. I then had Laura look into how my father-in-law is doing. So this would be my husband's father, my son's grandpa. 1 month before I gave birth to Brody, my son, my father-in-law passed. And Laura had told me my father-in-law is doing great. He's doing okay. And he actually was one of the guides on the other side who helped Brody determine whether or not he wanted to come into this lifetime as a female or a male, and if he wanted to come into this lifetime as a male, if he'd want to be more masculine or be more feminine. My father-in-law was talking to the soul of Brody and was explaining how Brody would actually get along better or be able to relate more with my husband if he was more masculine. Because if you saw my husband, I mean, he's very masculine. He's blue collar, hard worker, covered in tattoos. Like, he's probably the most man-like that, let's just say, I've ever dated. He's definitely not reptilian-like. And to provide more clarity as to what Laura had channeled, she did confirm that this was a DNA change. And you know what? I believe her. I 100% believe her. I believe my higher self. And I believe this for a couple of reasons. One, I believe that we do all decide our physical characteristics before we come onto Earth and incarnate in this human form. I do believe we choose every physical characteristic, our eyes, our nose, how tall we are, every single physical characteristic, because in the long run, it helps us to learn certain lessons. It helps us to put us in certain situations that would allow for us to realize certain goals that we might want to realize in this lifetime. And if you think about the fact that I would say almost everyone who's on Earth right now has had multiple past lives, although I'm not going to say everyone because anything is possible. If we've all had multiple past lives and we've all been presented with the opportunity to be whoever we want to be, to look however we want, both male and female, even if you did come into this lifetime and you have physical characteristics that you're not a fan of, you chose those for a reason. And I believe Brody chose to be a male in this lifetime for a reason. I think that his decision was just a very, very, very last minute one. I also believe my son changed his sex in the womb from female to male. Because have you ever heard of other stories of this happening to parents? Maybe not specifically, oh, it was a DNA change, but have you ever heard of stories of where a mom took a blood test or she had some pretty concrete evidence that she was for sure having a certain sex, and then when she delivered, the baby is the opposite sex? I have heard of this happening, and that sucks. Because then you get all ready and you get all of the baby stuff ready for that specific gender, and then they switch on you. This is why I highly recommend not finding out the sex until birth, because your baby might just change their mind. What do you think about my story? Have you ever experienced this? Have you even ever considered this as a possibility? Until it happened to me, I never even knew that this was possible. But alas, we live in an infinite universe where absolutely anything is possible. I do hope that this story helped to open up your minds a little bit about the possibilities of this universe. At this moment of recording the podcast, I'm just going to state for the record that I am pregnant with my second baby. We're not finding out the sex. I do feel like the baby is a boy. However, I am going to guess that this baby is going to trick me just like Brody did, and the baby is actually going to be a girl. So I am stating this for the record, and I hope at the least bit, if you don't believe my story, you found this entertaining. That's all I have for the Coming Out Cosmic podcast for now. I can't wait to see you in the next one. Bye.